All right, aloha everyone. Happy Aloha Friday, happy spring break week. Thank you thank you so much for taking the time to join us on a Friday afternoon. We really appreciate your presence and your interest in this very important topic related to Puna's recovery. I wanted to pull this meeting together with key county departments because we've gotten such information at our last Revitalize Puna activation in January about the status of road and water infrastructure restoration. And there have been some additional questions, especially around the timing of the construction work. I know that many of you are also interfacing with representatives at HAIMA and FEMA. And so there is information out there. And I think we all need to be on the same page, be very clear about what is happening, where we are at, how we are moving forward, and just ensuring that the best information is out there. Because at the end of the day, we want to make sure everybody is getting home as quickly as possible. And so today's conversation is really designed as a follow-up to our January activation. Wanted to ensure that Public Works had an opportunity to communicate any progress that has been achieved to date, and also be available to community members to ask questions. Want everybody to feel comfortable to do that. So I'm going to turn it over to my co-host for the evening, Douglas Lay, to introduce everyone from the County Ohana, and also just to give a little bit of an overview of how we will be conducting today's run of show. Thanks again for being here and participating. Douglas?
Yeah, thank you, Ashley. It's great that everyone could join us tonight. I know that the information that we're going to share is really critical for everyone to know, not only in terms of the efforts that we are continuing to push forward with, but also kind of how important it is for these road and waterline projects to come back for everyone in our communities to be able to move forward after the last few years. I will hand it off to let the county representatives introduce themselves in a minute, but I just want to walk through a couple of things that we'll cover today. After introductions, I will hand it over to our Director of Public Works, Pohoiki Road and Hurst, to provide a focused update on the roads projects, their timelines for those, and for Director Road and Hurst and Manager Chief Engineer Okamoto from the Department of Water Supply to talk about the nexus of project waterline and roads along Pohoiki Road and also Highway 137. During the presentations, if folks have any questions that you'd like to ask, we do ask that you put it in the chat, and we will come back to those questions after the presentations are over. At that point in time, we would like to open it up to discussion. I'll be moderating questions. We will take the questions in the chat first, but if you have any questions, I would ask that you raise your hand. I'm happy to walk through what that looks like if folks have any questions about how to do that. There's a button at the bottom of your screen or your phone, reactions, and then a button that says hand, raise hand. And we will kind of take folks one-on-one as those questions come forward. The only other thing I'll say is that if you are not speaking, we ask that you remain muted. We have quite a number of people on the call tonight, and so I would like to just also manage audio quality and things like that. With that, I'd like to hand it to Director Rodenhurst to introduce himself, and then to water supply and planning, please.
Mahalo, Douglas. My name is Kīlauea Rodenhurst. I'm the Director of Public Works for the county, and I'll be providing an update on the road schedule. I'll hand it over to Keith and folks to introduce themselves.
Thanks, Kīlauea. Keith Okamoto, Manager Chief Engineer, Department of Water Supply. And we have Kavika.
Good afternoon, Kavika Uehara, Deputy at Water Supply, and Kurt.
Good afternoon, Kurt Inaba, Engineering Division Head, Water Supply.
Good afternoon, y'all. Zendo Kern here, Planning Director for County of Hawaii. Thank you for being here, and looking forward to a good evening.
Great. So, Kīlauea, would you like me to project the slides?
Yes, please.
Okay.
All right. So I know that last year around this time, we provided an update on our schedule of where we were going. And from then till now, a lot of things have changed. There's been some setbacks on our previous schedule, and part of that has been the process of the FEMA EA review. That EA review does encompass all the projects for roads involved in this, whether it be Pohoiki Road, 137, Lighthouse Road. Those are all part of the EA process, which is currently underway. You can look at the top of this slide, initial planning section of it. That EA started in January of this year. It is the requirement for FEMA to get that completed by January of next year. They have given us their commitment to beat that schedule as much as possible, but for now, just for estimation purposes, we have it here as finishing in Q1 of 2023. During this process, our DPW folks are working in conjunction with Office of Corps Counsel to get right of entry for sorry, there you go. Yeah, so get right of entry for access to do activities related to the EA. And so those letters have been sent out, and more will be sent out. We can kind of get into that a little later. Once this EA process is complete in the planning section, we get to the the results of that EA. We're able to finalize our design for DPW's sake for the roads. Anything that came up in the EA that needs adjustments, we will be making those adjustments as quickly as possible. We have estimated this time here just for our best estimate of what we could anticipate as being issues there, and that is adequate enough time for us to address that. We've also worked with Department of Water Supply and any possible design issues that they may have to address following the EA. This is based off of their timeline that we've worked with them on. At the same time, getting the necessary right-of-way access for construction. And once that planning process is done, in fact, during that, once the design process is done, we will be getting into the procurement process for these 4 projects. I know we've talked a lot about upper and lower Pohoiki, upper and lower 137. And so to make it clear, we've provided this schedule here where our first and foremost is the Pohoiki Road. That's the lava inundated portion and the safety realignment as you head towards Mackay. And then going into the, going north on 137, once you get to the Pohoiki and 137 intersection, all the way up to Kapoho Beach Road, and the related water work with that. This is kind of put together as one project because of the necessity for that water line along our road there. And so the procurement process is estimated here. And then from there, we'll be able to move forward with the water line work and be done with this complete project by Q4 of 2025. I know that's a lot of work in there. And so that's why it's such a long schedule, is because it's not just upper Pohoiki, not just lower Pohoiki, it's the entirety of Pohoiki with 137 and the water line. At the same time, with the procurement for the other 3 projects will be going on. We have Mackenzie to Pohoiki Road along 137. Once that procurement is done, we anticipate that project to be complete in Q2 of 2024, as shown by the dark purple line. At the same time that project is being procured, we're also procuring the 4 corners to Kapoho Beach Road. And that is coming down from 4 corners, and that's going to be separate, like I said, from 137. And it's in response to the community's request to have that access. So we've parsed that portion out. Road construction for that anticipated to be completed in late Q2 of 2024 for this timeline. And then finally, Lighthouse Road procurement to be at the same time as the other 3 projects, and that road construction to be complete in the Q2 of 2024. A little clarifying statements here. These are estimates for procurement process, including bidding out to contractors and their responses along the way. So these are all our best estimates off of that. Hopefully we can do this work quicker, but this is what we have currently. And also all these construction projects going at the same time, we feel is needed for this area. And so we are preparing ourselves for that in this 2023, 2024 estimated timeframe here. As I said earlier, you know, there are some areas of this where we are hoping and we are working towards beating the schedule. But for estimation purposes and not to give you false hopes, this is our current schedule as it stands, and we are working our best to beat that schedule. Happy to take any other questions regarding anything presented here. And I look forward to hearing your thoughts on this update. If there's nothing else right now, I think I give that over to Keith, if I'm not mistaken, Douglas.
All right, yeah, thanks, Ikaika. Douglas, did you want to, or Ash, did you want to address some of the questions that I seen pop up on the chat?
Keith, why don't you go ahead and provide your presentation? I know it's short, and then we'll get into just larger Q&A. Thank you.
All right, yes, sounds good. Yeah, thanks. So I think, like as Ikaika mentioned, and mahalos to him and his team for allowing us to coordinate with them. It just is the prudent way to do construction is if a roadway is going in and a water line is going in, that they be done as a concurrent project, as part of one overall project. It's just the most prudent way to proceed. So if you can see on the graphic, the dark, or I guess that middle blue row, the second one is where our work will be combined with DPW's road work. Again, that's from along Pohoiki Road, and then from the intersection of Pohoiki and 137 towards Kapohokai Drive is where we'll have the water line installation work happen. Fairly straightforward as far as concept, just basically a water line. Implementation for us is going to be the major challenge. Of course, as we cross the fissure section on Upper Pohoiki is where we have unique water line installation planned. And Kurt Inaba, the head of our engineering division, can get into a little bit more details, but it's not going to be our standard. We anticipate non-standard water line installation. Normally our water lines are buried and you don't see them. But because of the subsurface heat, we're looking at probably a open trench with the water line placed within the open trench and protected from the subsurface heat coming up from the bottom by hopefully compacted base course, basically gravel that's compacted to a certain thickness to allow an insulating barrier from that underground heat from directly impacting the water line and the gaskets, and hopefully can dissipate around the water line, if that makes sense. So that's our current initial design at this point in time. Kurt, did you want to kind of explain a little bit more detail or say anything else about the water line construction?
I think that was about as descriptive as I could get. Also, you know, we will put it below grade. It still will be below grade, so that in the future, you know, we will have the opportunity to cover it if and when the heat dissipates enough. Yeah, and so there may be access to certain properties that may be of concern. So.
Can you confirm the water main diameter that we're bringing down Pohoiki and what we're going to bring down 137?
Right now the plans are we have a 6-inch coming down Pohoiki to the park there, and from there it would be 4-inch going across along 137.
Alrighty, I think that's it for us, Douglas and Ash.
Thank you, Keith. Thank you, Kaika. You know, Ashley and I are monitoring the questions that are coming in the chat. I know a couple of questions that have come up around the same topic is to seek clarity in terms of the project that will bring the road and the water line up into Kapoho, but also the project that will bring the road from Four Corners down into the Kapoho area. What is that cutoff? Is it Kapoho Beach Road or Kapoho Kai? Maybe we could start with kind of how far the water will come up 137. If you could help clarify that.
Keith, you want to take the water line one?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll take the water line one. Kurt, you want to explain what our plans are as far as the water line along 137?
Okay, so the water line along 137 right now is planned to go to Kapoho Kai Drive. We do have in the environmental assessment though, it's like an alternate to include to go back to Kapoho Beach Road. The reason for that is being if we have, additional funds available, we want to extend it back to there. It does provide FEMA the opportunity to look at that now. So if that becomes a reality, we don't have to stop the project for their further environmental review. So it's really there right now to Kapoho Beach Road as a planning purpose, yeah. But the intent, right, is to go back to Kapoho Kai Drive at this time. Or Kapoho Kai Road, sorry.
Yep. Thanks, Kurt.
Yep.
Yeah. Mahalo, Keith, mahalo, Kurt, for that. And just to recap for the DPW side, we can make adjustments to this as necessary with what happens with that. And so that's kind of our current plan for this point. So I hope that answers the question. If it does not, by all means, let me know what else I can do to clarify.
Great. So another question we have is on 137. Can you a map of what is the upper and what is the lower 137?
So upper and lower were used previously to kind of separate 137 going up from Pohoiki and 137 going south from Pohoiki. We kind of strayed away from that in this presentation right now because we have 137 from Four Corners to Kapoho Beach Road here, as well as 137 from Kapoho Beach Road to Pohoiki along one there for the water project. And then finally 137 Mackenzie to Pohoiki Road. That's what we're currently using to provide these schedules here today to give you more clarity on that. I know upper and lower can get kind of confusing. And so if there's anything else I can do to explain that, I'm happy to clarify.
So we have a couple more questions coming through the chat so far in terms of segments, but before we do that, I think a foundational one that would be helpful to cover are some questions regarding procurement. So we have questions about what is procurement, what does it involve, and what about the timing of it? Can it be done any sooner?
So procurement involves us getting the bid for the contract, the construction package and construction contract out for advertisement and give contractors an opportunity to review and put their bids together and submit those for us to review and take lowest bidder that meets the appropriate scope and all the requirements of the bidding process. So is it possible to make that process quicker? It could be possible. It all depends on the responses from the construction community and what type of bids are submitted in that process. Keith, I don't know if you have anything other specific for water or anything you want to add to that for this one.
No, that is basically it. And just so everyone is aware, being government entities, we are required by state procurement law to follow certain procedures. And typical one for projects like this is competitive sealed bids, where you issue a bid document that has plans and specifications out for people who are qualified to review and submit a bid proposal on. Sounds simple enough, but devil in the details typically happen. And so you don't want to make it too short, and you don't provide enough time for the contractors to review and provide a good bid, basically. So yeah, and that's how it works with a government procurement for this type of project.
Well, Keith, one thing I want to add, I saw a question earlier about why can't we do that ASAP? It does need us, like Keith mentioned, to have that design in place. And that design is hinged off of the environmental assessment through FEMA. So we're going through the process as quickly as possible. It's frustrating, but we are doing what is required of us by law and by both federal, or all federal, state, and county code.
Kaika, thank you.
Ikaika, correct me if I'm wrong, but we cannot bypass any of the process without jeopardizing the federal funding, is my understanding.
Correct.
Thanks for that, Keith. And that was a point that I wanted to clarify, because there were some questions in the chat around, can we push procurement up? And so just want to be very clear that the procurement process cannot happen until the design and engineering work has been finalized. And that is all contingent upon FEMA reviewing, completing the environmental assessment. Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, if I may, because this is more of a global comment, I think related to what you just shared, Ashley, we have a question about if the EA process was completed sooner, right? Sooner than the year that's currently being anticipated, could we start sooner? Okay, I am seeing nodding heads.
Correct. So that would I guess it would collapse that EA bar here in the top for initial planning and move up all the activities to the right, move them closer to the left, and we would see an increased schedule. Or sorry, increased speed of our schedule.
And you know, on this project plan, we have noted FEMA with the environmental assessment. You know, I think many of us are accustomed to hearing about environmental impact statements, environmental assessments. In this case, with the federal funds from FEMA, FEMA is what is called the responsible entity. So they are leading the environmental assessment, but they are working really closely with HIEMA and also the county departments you see here. We've been meeting with them on a bi-weekly basis, actually, to keep things going and ensure that communication and information is flowing smoothly so that they can drive the process they need to with the county support.
Director, there was another question, and I mean, you've kind of alluded to this, how we can't do anything that deviates from the process because it could jeopardize our ability to be reimbursed by the federal government. But has there ever been an official formal documentation from FEMA to affirm that we cannot, in fact, provide for any temporary roads as we work on the more formal roads? Where are we on that? Any communication?
Yes, so we have been in communication with FEMA, and I understand that folks have been in contact with FEMA and HIEMA about a question such as this. So the quick answer is it, or the quick question, is it possible to get temporary road? Yes, it's possible. But what does that look like? So for example, for Pohoiki, a temporary road would have been possible more recently because of the reduced temperatures of the lava. The hottest spots of the lava do go across Pohoiki. But because of the change in topography due to the lava over the road, it requires us to change the geometrics of the road, the vertical and horizontal placement of it. And because of that deviation from the original alignment of Pohoiki, it kicks in the EA process even at the without FEMA's funds. So regardless, you would have had to engage in an environmental assessment process to provide that temporary road. And since we're doing that already with this current process, we're going to be ready to do a road. It's going to be the permanent road. So again, the temporary road, first and foremost, was hung up on the fact that the lava was at temperatures that did not allow for us to move over it in this area. It's a hotter spot than was on, say, like 132 or even areas along 137. And then, you know, if we were to pursue that option now, we would still have to go through an environmental assessment process, which we currently are already going through. And so once this process is done, we'll be able to have the permanent road. And that's, you know, our communication from FEMA as well. They have given us a determination that that temporary road would be not at FEMA's cost, because they would not allow it without going through their processes. It would be solely on the county. But it would be possible so long as we follow all the other requirements at the state and county level. Is that clear? And if that's confusing, I'm happy to make some clarifying statements on that.
So while we're on that, there is a related question that's come across in the chat. How does that, I think we're referring to the ability to do a temporary road, how does that affect 137 for a temporary road from Four Corners to Pohoiki? Yeah.
That's a good question. That's one we could look into and see what that looks like. It would be, like I said, it wouldn't be part of the FEMA monies for this. But as I said, we are already going down the EA process, and I'm not sure. I'll have to take a look at the specifics of that section. If we were to determine that it's possible, I think that's something we could consider in the short term, but I haven't considered going through that exercise for 137. Definitely consider get back to you on that one.
And this is a question for water. That we've received a number of questions regarding the capacity of the 4-inch water line that is proposed from Pohoiki up to Kapoho. The level of service in terms of taps from it, and also capacity to build, to be able to serve farms that are looking to reestablish in the Kapoho area.
Yeah, I'll start, and maybe after that, I'll turn it over to Kurt. So just to provide some background, as you recall, initially, we had concerns because of the lack of potential people being down there due to the participation in the buyout program. Several meetings ago, the folks in Vacation Land, assured us that there was people committed to return, and we reviewed the information that Douglas folks was able to provide, from the buyout, various phases, and it was confirmed that there was several dozen, at least, within the Vacation Land area that were not participating in the buyout. So could potentially reestablish and use the water. Because our concern back then was if there's no water use and the pipeline is oversized, the water quality becomes a serious concern. Stagnant water in the pipe and whatnot. So this is why we settled on agreeing to proceed with a 4-inch because that kind of has the balance of providing enough water for those intending to return, but not being so large to have stagnation be a major issue. Kurt can probably talk a little bit more about capacity of the 4-inch, but at this point, we're not anticipating feeding large volumes to farms. It's primarily for the Vacation Land area. Kurt, can you add to that?
Yeah, so and especially for, the residential use, and even farms, the 4-inch does have pretty significant capacity water line. Um, if there was like high peak demands, but it obviously would serve typically a lot more people. In this distance, you may have losses. What we do have here though is also, it's really at the bottom of a system and you have a lot of pressure behind it. So, it will flow. As far as calculations, we ran calculations, it will flow a significant amount of water at adequate pressures to the area there. We don't anticipate
and to-
any, yeah, sorry, go ahead. Yeah, we
No,
don't
to-
anticipate any.
To add to that, so it kind of it depends. So when you have a water line, I think what losses that Kurt was talking about is just physics, and there's friction losses when water moves along a water pipe. So that friction losses results in pressure losses. So a 4-inch water line, for example, as far as GPM wise, Kurt, at certain velocity, we're talking about how many GPM you think, gallons per minute?
We're looking at about 300 plus gallons per minute at 10 feet per second. Almost actually over 350, I believe was. But yeah, I mean, that's a whole lot more than you would anticipate being able to use, along through your services.
Yep. Thanks, Kurt.
So moving on some of the questions, there are a couple of questions regarding the federal Section 106 and consultation with lineal descendants and Native Hawaiian organizations. And when we talk about Section 106, that is a reference to the National Historic Preservation Act that's required as part of the environmental review process that's currently underway. The questions are, when will proper consultation happen? And so since FEMA's kicked off the environmental assessment in January, the county's provided a lot of information in terms of the environmental assessments and other types of reviews that the county's been a party to with lineal descendants and Native Hawaiian organizations of the area, and those names, those organizations, and contacts for when FEMA is ready to start that Section 106 consultation process. That is a starting place from which they will do that consultation work. FEMA and the county also kind of are going to work with the State Historic Preservation Division of the Department of Land and Natural Resources, staff here on island who have a deep knowledge of this place and of the connections and lineal descendants of the area. They'll also be advising in terms of consultations that FEMA must conduct as part of this federal review process. I hope that helps to clarify some of those questions. So it hasn't started yet, but it will start soon. I think an overall question for this nexus of roads and water is, for those residents who are looking to return to these inundated areas that currently are not accessible because of the lack of roads and water, when can they expect to be home, right? And I think it is a different type of response for those that may be isolated versus those that need water to be restored and are rebuilding in inundated areas. I don't know if Ikaika, you can speak to that relative to the broader time frame, in addition to Keith folks.
Yeah, so for these timeframes it's hard to answer everyone's specific question because everyone's home is different area along this path. So this is why we have the projects kind of parsed out in this manner. So we're showing our current intention for this project from Pohoiki to 137 up to Kapoho Beach Road. That's really our path, is to start from the lava inundated portion of Pohoiki, move along that, go along down lower Pohoiki, that section that's not inundated with lava, and then head north along 137 towards Kapoho Beach Road. So for folks along the that access, that's where we intend to go, and we should have access as we progress with that project. Same with the other 3 projects. As we progress, we will have more access. So for example, Four Corners to Kapoho Beach Road, we'll start at Four Corners and come down. And as we progress down there with our construction, we will provide access as soon as it is achievable. So I hope that answers the question. It's really still just a broad general outline there. But as the construction progresses, we will be allowing folks to get in and out safely.
I think clarifying question on that, Ikaika, that is coming across on the chat is on the timing and sequencing of construction. If we look at this timetable, these 4 major projects, the Pohoiki and 137 that are receiving water lines, kicking off at the same time that the section of Four Corners down is also kicking off, correct me if I'm wrong, and the permanent work on what is temporary along Highway 137 at Mackenzie. Within that longer timeline of the roads and water line, it's our understanding that we can kind of think of that long bar in thirds, right? We'll first start with Pohoiki, the inundated section, to come down to bring the road and the water. And then next we will work on the lower portion of Pohoiki, that realignment, before we then come back up Highway 137. That's accurate,
Correct.
Right?
Yeah, correct. And so that project will be ongoing at the same time as the other 3 that we're working towards. So these will be running concurrently. And so that's per one kind of our direction just for that. But yeah, we'll be running these concurrently as much as possible.
So I have a couple of water supply questions that have come through. With the plans to restore the line down Pohoiki, could you clarify kind of the dimensions of the line down Pohoiki, and then the dimensions of the line going up Highway 137, and in particular with the ability to restore water down Pohoiki to the boat ramp and park area, is there capacity to serve those future park uses and boat ramp uses?
Yeah, so again, the water line size going down Pohoiki Road from the top to the bottom will be a 6-inch water line. And then the water line going along 137 from Pohoiki to Kapohokai will be a 4-inch water line. And the 6-inch will be adequate to provide the needs for the boat ramp, Isaac Park, as well as to feed the 4-inch that heads towards Kapohokai Drive. Kurt, did you have anything else to add?
Nope, that's about it. I do see, what was previously there. So actually, the boat ramp used to use the park's water. As they call it, park. They have 1 meter, the county's meter there. I don't have the exact consumption. It wasn't that significant, So we anticipate similar use on it. So we should be adequate there. I don't have the exact numbers.
Is that something that we could understand and follow back up on, that utilization prior to the eruption?
Sorry, I was on mute. Yes.
Thank you, Kurt. Sorry, folks, just kind of tracking the chat to kind of organize questions. I think, maybe comments and also things for water supply to take away in terms of as we move forward, to be clear on how the current level of service that's being planned, the 6-inch line and the 4-inch line, relate to the anticipated uses. which is something that we have covered before. Just want to acknowledge the comments coming through. And we have a hand up. So Leila, would you have a question?
I just have a comment. And so thank you so much, Douglas and Ash, for putting this together, and Director Rodenhurst and Keith folks from the Department of Water Supply for just being here to share with us this evening. So I just want to make sure that we do, so if this EA process goes faster than normal, because I didn't get an answer to my question about if it does go faster than anticipated, how will we know that it's actually finished faster? That was my one question to that. And then how will we know we're getting contacted for the EA process?
So for progress along these milestones, our team with Kīlauea Recovery, the public information teams at Water Supply and Public Works, we hope to be able to kind of really communicate where we are along this timeline in real time. We try to use all methods we can, whether it be through the paper where a lot of folks get their information, social media, our newsletter that has over 1,300 subscribers. We definitely want to be able to share kind of these major milestones, such as when we anticipate the environmental assessment to be completed. FEMA's environmental assessment also has several public milestones, public comment periods, in addition to the Section 106 consultation I mentioned earlier. And so we want to be able to push that out so folks can understand and be aware. I think it's very similar to the actions the National Park has done recently, on the rebuilding that they're looking to do at their site. You can expect the same from FEMA once those periods come forward. So those are different ways, and we really see it incumbent upon ourselves as a team to share that information out so people know what's going on and have an opportunity to contribute and provide feedback when they happen.
Thank you.
Douglas, and if I could just add to that, Leila, thanks for asking about the communication piece. I think having this timeline is incredibly helpful because now we have a better sense of when exactly the departments should be moving on various aspects of infrastructure restoration. I think we can go a little bit deeper. I hope, Director Rodenhurst, we can. There's a general flow that happens within the environmental assessment process, specifically the triggering of the 106E. So maybe a follow-up graphic to this Gantt chart could be what those steps include, just the high level major ones, so that we can, I think, get into a rhythm of having the community be aware and prepared for when they will be engaged, but also we can use this as a way to gauge progress that is happening within the departments. And again, maybe we can consider a monthly update now that this is out on progress made for each of the milestones that have been laid out.
So we've come to that portion of the hour. I think we've been taking a lot of the questions and comments in chat. We'd like to kind of open it up. So if folks have other questions or comments, please raise your hand in Zoom, and we will be calling on folks as they do that. Thanks, Leila and Amadeo, for kicking us off. Amadeo, go ahead.
Hi, thanks for doing this. This is awesome. It's good to get clarity about where we are timing wise. I want to address the Halanui situation. I personally have been out to the site where Halanui used to be, and there's amazing beaches and ponds and quite a bit of stuff out there. And so I would urge you to please procure the data related to the water consumption at that previous park, which I don't know if you folks all know this, but that was the second most used beach park on the island of Hawaii. And the average daily usage of the hot pond itself was over 1,000 people. We were able to corroborate that with the fire department and ocean safety. And so based off those numbers and planning for the future reconstruction of that area, it seems like the water consumption of that park and Pohoiki are very important as far as water sizes, line sizes. So I was hoping that at the next meeting, you guys might have an idea of how much water was consumed at that beach park. Thank you.
Maybe, sorry, I did find a consumption.
Oh,
We
great.
did have, so it is, they use the 1,300 gallons per day, average of that. So, you know, maybe 3 homes or so, you know, equivalent of that. And Pohoiki was about 4,500 gallons per day.
And water size of the 4-inch line is sufficient to provide water for
Oh,
that
yeah.
infrastructure.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Any other statements from the floor? Feel free to raise your hand and we can call on you. Douglas, I also just wanted to recognize Leslie's comment in the chat about the long list of ohana that we have compiled based on our outreach for Revitalize Pohoiki. So Leslie, we will absolutely be ensured to contact the ohana when the 106 process does convene. Thank you for that.
So our team is working through most of the questions in the chat. I would like to ask if you feel like there's a comment in the chat that you shared, but we haven't been able to address, if you could please speak to it. We want to make sure that questions are answered.
Go ahead, Deb.
Aloha. So I just want to reiterate to Director Rodenhurst that please consider a temporary road from Four Corners to at least KBC Road, if not Kapoho Kai. This is a shock to me, looking at a whole nother year that I still cannot access my home. I mean, even though I'm living out here, but I just really beg you to look into that. Thank you.
Yes, we will be looking into that. It's my understanding from our previous look into it that it would not have been possible at the time. But like I said, I'll have to revisit that and see where we're at with that. So we will be looking into that.
Seven, go ahead. Seven, if you're speaking, we can't hear you.
Sorry, had the mute on. We're in upper lower Pohoiki Road, and we're in a kipuka. I think there's 8 homes here. Could we have a temporary road pushed back in for us so that we can get insurance and
have legal access
to our properties here?
From the lower.
And this is coming from Isaac Hawley Park up the Mango Lane at the very top where the lava cut us off. And that's it.
So if I'm correct in understanding this, and please correct me if I'm wrong here, you're asking about from the within that lava inundated portion, getting a temporary road into that, to one of the kipukas in there, correct?
Correct.
It has 9 homes.
Where do I push it here? Sorry.
Just answer.
Can you hear me?
Yes, 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 I
there's,
can. Can you hear
9
me?
homes. 9 homes here.
Understood. And as I mentioned earlier, for the Pohoiki one, which is where I received a question early about this, actually, I think it was early this week as well as late last week about Pohoiki. That section requires us to go through an EA process, which we're currently going through to get a road built, whether it be a temporary or a permanent road. So we have to go through an EA process for that.
Well, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear.
Okay, all right. We are actually a portion, our property borders, and this Kipuka borders a corner of the paved road still. And so literally I don't see where this is not a realignment that would require an environmental impact. This is literally your easement. Couldn't you put a temporary road and connect with the pavement again
The 2 pavements.
on your actual easement of Pohoiki Road?
This is not a realignment part.
This is not a realignment. This is literally just opening up your easement with a temporary road. Currently, these 8-9 households are using a temporary road across a neighbor's property on a handshake. And you can have insurance based on not having legal access. I mean, we were looking at literally less than a quarter mile. And that's it.
If you can give me the location and addresses on that, we'll take a look at what that said and get your response on that one.
13-640. Pohoiki Road, 96778. You can Google it. Google map it.
Sorry, what's the address again?
13-640.
Okay, got it.
Thank you so much. That's it.
Thank you, Seven. Amadeo, yeah, I see your hand up.
Yes, I had another question as a follow-up to Deb Smith's temporary road access for vacation land beach lots. My question is the holdup as far as a temporary road, is it the FEMA for that portion? Because it is an existing easement, like the fellow who just spoke mentioned, and is not a realignment. And I'm sorry, having a hard time talking over those folks that didn't mute. And then in addition, we help facilitate the road reconstruction into Kapoho Crater. And we were able to traverse the very, very hot lava over the surface and, reestablish a road. So is the holdup for the temporary access for Kapoho Kai, is that due to the FEMA EA, or is it due to the road being too hot, quote unquote, to reestablish access? Just trying to figure out why they can't have a temporary road. If you could elaborate on that.
So let me ask this from you, that's correct. This is for Pohoiki Road?
No, sir. This is for Kapoho from Four Corners to the 2 subdivisions, so that the folks that have homes there that are still like Deb Smith's home can access it. I mean, because to tell them that they still have to wait another 2 years before they can have vehicular access is quite a shock to everybody, I think. And the reality is, as I said earlier, we've reestablished access over freshly fresh lava flows. And my Hanai father is Alfred Lee, and he was able to reestablish Royal Garden access within 1 year after their flow. So I'm trying to understand why a temporary road can't be put in for those folks. Is it the FEMA realignment issue, or is it because the road is too hot?
Well, it's not a FEMA realignment issue. Anytime we realign the road, that to a certain extent, we're going to have to go through EA review process where the road differs from the original alignment. And that's required by law. So it's not necessarily FEMA law, it's federal, state, and county standards there. Federal, state, and county laws there. So we're actually, the issue here for the temporary road is that EA review process. So for us, it is an EA review, and we're not allowed to parse it out. As far as my understanding is to go a little bit here, a little bit there. And I think that's what some of these questions are coming out as we're talking about, what about this small section here, what about that small section there? It's already been identified as a project. And so because of that, it's gonna require us to get that EA process. And like I said, because we're going through the EA process currently, we're able to move forward with getting the road out there. I mean, it's happening. I understand from everyone's history of this that you have been waiting, and I get the frustration on that. I do understand, and I apologize. We can't move any faster than this right now. Like I mentioned, for the 137 portion, if there's something else we can do, I'll take a look at it. But my understanding as of this meeting, we cannot put that temporary access there without an EA in place for this as a system.
Thank you so much for elaborating. Appreciate it.
Yeah. And hopefully we can get some updates on that as well. We're working on that, but right now our main focus is to go along this process, but we will entertain and ask these questions to our counterparts at HAIMA and FEMA.
And Douglas, I just want to highlight a comment that came out on the chat about just our coordination with FEMA. I know that I'm not sure if Public Works or your office had reached out to see if we could have a FEMA official on this call, but I do think it's important at some point for us to have a rep from FEMA to really corroborate our timeline and to just be available to answer communities' questions and ensure that everyone is very clear on what the federal standards are and what really the expectations have been set out for the county.
I appreciate your point on that, Ashley. We don't have someone from FEMA here tonight. We are working to confirm staff from both FEMA and HAIMA at our next community activation on April 11th, where we'll be kind of out talking to folks, and that will be an opportunity to connect with representatives from both HAIMA and FEMA who are at the table with the county on these projects. There are a couple questions are starting to also come in through the chat. One is about asking the capacity of water lines that service the resorts in West Hawaii over older eruption areas relative to what we're facing now in this in the Lower Puna eruption area in 2018. The question is really around the supply lines that service the resort areas of West Hawaii.
Well, that's kind of broad question. Which resort areas are we talking about? The Mauna Lani, Mauna Kea, Waikoloa areas, the Kukio, Hualalai, Four Season areas, and I guess what is the question again?
The question did not specify just what size pipes service those areas. It may vary is one part of it. Is that right, Keith? Depending on the areas being served?
Oh yeah, it varies, and there's a lot of history. They developed source, storage, transmission. They paid for generally all the infrastructure needed to supply their resorts typically. Yeah, from wells to storage tanks to transmission water lines. They paid for all of that. So I'm not getting the relationship or the basis for the question and its relation to over here, I guess.
Auntie, oh, great. Auntie Nancy just raised her hand. Auntie, go ahead and unmute yourself and maybe just provide a little bit more texture to your question so Keith and his team can answer. Go ahead.
Aloha, can you? Aloha?
We can hear you. Auntie, I think you might have unmuted yourself or muted yourself.
Aloha?
Perfect.
All right. Thank you for this meeting, everybody. My question, I guess, is for years, I know it's an older lava flow, but whenever I go there, I see, pipes overland. I know it's an older, cooled off lava flow, but I guess my question is to supply that, I'm trying to understand the capacity of 4-inch versus 6-inch. And I know they have storage tanks, they have some wells, but if you could give me a general idea of when they began, what size pipes they had, so I can understand if a 4-inch is suitable for rebuilding our beach parks along 137. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. They do not have above ground water lines. Those might be actually private customer lines. All the main water
Okay.
infrastructure that is feeding the large resorts on that side are buried. Typical same pipelines that we have planned here, maybe different sizing. Resorts use a lot of water, especially if they incorporate irrigation into their requirements. They also have a large capacity necessary for fire protection for that type of facility. So those are typically what govern the large water main storage and the source capacities for those types of development, if that makes sense.
Keith, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so the Kūkio and the different housing developments that are going along with these resorts, are those the pipes that I see above ground?
I don't know what pipes you're seeing above ground, to tell you the truth.
Okay.
Yeah, because all the ones that go feed the subdivisions are
Yes.
buried. They're supposed to be buried.
All right. In the early days, and I've been here for 50 years. So in the early days, when these developments were coming in, it seemed very possible to feed them with larger water lines. I'm just hoping East Side gets that same consideration as we reconstruct. Just trying to figure it out, Keith. Mahalo.
No, thanks for the questions. Yeah, it helps to understand, I guess, the basis for the question so we can properly respond. So yeah, thank you for elaborating on the question. Appreciate it.
Maybe I can clarify possibility, because there could be some above ground lines, but it could be their irrigation lines too. So they have separate irrigation systems. A lot of those resorts, they'll take
For golf courses. So
Yeah.
Kurt, that's like for golf courses and stuff, yeah?
Correct.
Yeah, well, we're farmers, hon. We're not golfing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And, this is a question for Keith and the folks at Water Supply, but specifically about the funding. Can you help explain the total funding that Department of Water Supply has received from FEMA, kind of the breakdown between the county and the federal share, and also how much is going to the projects we're talking about tonight, down Pohoiki Road and up Highway 137?
Yeah. So the total estimate for, based on the infrastructure evaluation that was conducted with FEMA, is approximately $40 million, real close to 40, of which 75% will be covered by FEMA, and the county has to come up with a 25% balance, right? So FEMA will provide approximately 30 million, and we need to come up with the 10 million. As far as the water line down Pohoiki Road and 137 to Kapohokai, Kurt, do you have that estimate available?
Yeah, sorry, I know I should have this, but I've been working on all of the projects recently. I can pull that up pretty quickly here.
That's Highway 137, 2.3 million.
But I think we have Pohoiki Road at 6 million.
Yeah.
And, related to this, I know we are talking about the projects down Pohoiki Road and Highway 137 today. Could you speak about how the Department of Water Supply identified and prioritized projects that kind of have been moved forward with the available funds with the FEMA assistance?
Yeah, so, well, first off, this section was priority 1, Pohoiki and the water line going 137. And to be quite frank, I anticipate that these estimates will be exceeded once we go to construction. Based on the material prices now, and everybody's seeing what's happening with the fuel, which is going to affect transportation and all that trickle down effect that it's going to impact what we see as far as construction costs moving forward. And then the fact that we really will have to get creative on the upper Pohoiki segment crossing the Fisher Line. So anyway, I really anticipate that the estimates that we provided so far is going to be short. That being said, so Pohoiki and 137, this is our top priority as far as the water infrastructure that we have proposed. We also have water projects in other areas, again, based upon information received throughout this whole recovery process, the buyout program, information on where folks have relocated to. So our other projects really are focused on, we don't know exactly where people have moved to, we just kind of know general areas. So what we're trying to do with other projects outside of the inundated areas is to provide opportunities for housing and economic development and recovery for the larger region as a whole, all while trying to keep it within the larger Puna region. Yeah. But we're still going through outreach on those projects, meeting with the community on those projects and getting their feedback. So we're still kind of massaging our project specifics on those. We have preliminary designs, conceptual basically, of those other projects. But this Pohoiki and 137, we're at the point where we actually have preliminary design, some preliminary plan and profile, if that makes sense. It's much more detailed than any of our other projects that we have under consideration. Did that answer the question, Douglas? I'm not sure.
No, thank you for addressing it, Keith.
And I believe our county recovery webpage has those other projects displayed and described as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I can include the link for folks, but if you go to our website, Kīlauea recovery at Hawaii County, recovery.hawaiicounty.gov. There is a page on infrastructure and where we provide more details on road and water lines. We will be updating it to cover the information that we're sharing this evening. So please stay tuned on those updates. But that's where folks can find the latest on the other prioritized water projects as well.
Thanks, Douglas. I put the link in the chat a couple of times. Keith, not sure if you were able, I know you're tracking the chat as well, but a couple comments about increasing the line from 4 inches to 6 inches along 137. Is that something you guys might be able to consider right now?
Yeah, I guess it's up for consideration, but again, if you recall, our big concern and even as recently as maybe third quarter last year, we were hesitant to put any water line down 137. And primarily it was because of the results of the buyout. Lack of use on a water line is basically gonna, again, cause water quality issues. So we wanna have that balance of providing what's necessary without oversizing and run the risk of having stagnant water, basically. Yeah, and like Kurt mentioned, a 4-inch has decent capacity. We're not going to be able to provide typical fire flow volumes, 500 gallons per minute for an hour duration type, which is typically something a 6-inch water line can handle. But as I think one question happened at our March 3rd meeting with the vacation land folks, I think they brought up the question about fire protection. And when we looked at it further, our water line actually went through several 2-inch or smaller meters. So there was never really that fire protection within that subdivision to begin with. And I believe that question was partially answered by our planning director too, as far as, not having to improve the situation for this recovery phase. So yeah, basically our understanding and our plan moving forward is that the 4 inches is more than adequate to supply the needs of the area.
We have a question from the chat regarding the impacts in terms of real property tax. I don't know if any of the department heads could speak to it specifically, but if I can kind of lightly paraphrase, the fact that there have been parcels that have not have access, have not kind of enabled farmers to be able to return. Will there be any kind of accommodation or adjustment to the property tax because of these access issues?
Sorry, don't look at me on that one, Douglas.
Okay, I will commit to following up on that one, unless Zendo or anyone. Okay.
No, unfortunately, I do not have an answer there for that. Apologize.
Yeah.
Douglas, let's ask our finance director, Diana Salco, and also take it to Lisa Miura, our real property tax administrator.
Okay, and thank you. Amadeo, we see your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out in terms of water usage and anticipated needs, one of the caveats for satellite schools and maybe even the reestablishing of Kīlauea or other campuses in that area is the ability to provide for an incredible large quantity of water for fire suppression. I think you mentioned that. And so in the event that the school does wish to reestablish some sort of satellite campus, and then also thinking about the industries that were displaced by the lava, like the orchid farmers who require incredible water intensive farming techniques. It seems to me, and based off the growth of Puna and the population increases that were reflected in the most recent census, I think we can anticipate a considerably larger volume in the near future, in my estimate. But so I hope that you folks are taking into consideration that increased demand for water based off of those issues as well. Thank you. I guess my other question quickly, while I'm still on, is how would you go about upgrading the diameter of the water line if in fact later on it becomes necessary to increase the amount of water provided to that area? Is that feasible?
Yeah, it would be feasible. It just, again, time and money. Basically, it would require additional design and probably another parallel pipe for additional capacity. if it was to be considered down the road.
Thank you.
So really appreciate everyone's questions, sharing your comments and also your concerns about the timeline and how we are moving forward. I'm also hearing suggestions about ensuring that we keep everyone informed as we move forward along this process, where we speed up, communicating if there are any bumps along the road and how that may impact our timelines, so that folks understand what is going on. Definitely tasks we can take on as we move forward on this together. We have about 10 minutes left in our time, and just wanted to call out if there are any kind of final questions or from the group that we wanted to cover.
Douglas, could we just put a quick plug in for our next community activation, Monday, April 11th? That is another opportunity to be connecting with department heads. And so some of the questions that were raised today, perhaps that can be a space in which we can be providing answers to community, if not sooner. We will also be getting an update from DLNR and their consultant on status of restoration for Pohoiki boat ramp. So it will be in person Monday, April 11th, 4:30 p.m. at Shore Foundation. Doors open at 3:30. I will put in the chat the link to register for that event. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Ashley. Perfect timing. I think that's really a good opportunity for us to be together and to continue these conversations. We are recording and tracking some of the specific follow-up items. So for those folks who asked them, we will be following up. And if you registered, then we have your contact information for today's meeting. Any final thoughts or questions before we wrap up for this evening? Well, I just want to say, I think it's important to acknowledge what the time that has passed has meant for so many families that were directly impacted and are still impacted by the events of the 2018 eruption. We know that these schedules aren't along the lines that we would like to see, but I think we've covered a lot of the technical aspects and the policy issues and the construction feasibility pieces that we've tried to solve for to get these projects done in a timely manner from this way forward. And so really appreciate everyone's time for listening, for your thoughtful questions as well. We'll continue to keep information up to date on the website and to get information out as we progress along here. But really just appreciate, if nothing else, the continued partnership of everyone here in the call, friends old and new, and kind of close partnership with Councilmember Kirkwood's office. Yes, and we always welcome the creative ideas to be able to kind of push forward and have to really cover those with our partners. But thank you, Nicolette, for that kind of ending sentiment. So with that, I really wish everyone a warm aloha. Again, thank you for your time this afternoon, and we look forward to connecting with everyone on April the 11th. Take care, everyone.
Aloha.